Hello. So, a student has asked me to look quickly at the question, to what extent has a text you have studied engaged with the conventions of its genre to convey significant messages about the human condition? Now, I'm not going to be giving you a whole essay. I'm just going to be raising some ideas and looking at how you could perhaps structure it, as well as addressing all aspects of the question. I'm receiving information and placing it in here from LitChart's Symbolism in the Crucible and Similarities to McCarthyism and VCEstudyguides.com. These are all linked from our Moodle, but I want to credit them here so that you don't misunderstand where my information came from, and also so you can go look for further clarification if you want to later. Your answer has to have aspects of evaluation, because you're having to say to what extent things have had an impact. You, of course, have to be using the Crucible. You have to be looking at conventions of its genre. You might want to be looking at it in the fact that it is a play, but as we are in literature and we are looking at movements in literary theory, you'll probably be wanting to look at it as either an example of realist drama or an example of tragedy, or a combination of the two, which is probably a lot easier. Significant messages about the human condition means that you must be showing that there is some kind of universal message being made here. The fact that it says human condition means that there's the creation of empathy and understanding about what it is integral to being a human being. Now, when we look at how we're going to answer that, we probably want to be looking at the idea that there is an importance of resisting social pressure to value reputation over integrity, even at the risk of one's personal safety. If you have done any further reading of the Crucible, which I assume you have, then you would know that the Salem witch trials are meant to be a representation of the McCarthy trials at that time when this was being written. So he is speaking to his own audience about the fact that they should value their integrity. They should stand up against this social pressure to dob on their fellow man. Should they dob? Because you might use that in an essay and they get in lots of trouble. The idea of not turning upon each other, the idea of, remaining true to what is authentic and right in their beliefs and their ideology. Just like John Proctor ultimately has to accept that as a Christian, his ideology says that he must not lie. He must be an honest man. He must be a good man. To be a good man, he has to actually admit that he wasn't always a good man. And his failure to do so at the beginning is actually what his failure, to value integrity over reputation at the beginning, when he fails to reveal Abigail in time, is what lets evil into his society. So, ways that you could structure it, I would suggest start with the symbolism of the crucible. Now, of course, in literature essays, and in fact also with ATAR English essays, it's always actually better to start with the idea you're going to be looking at. So look at the fact that the motif here is the merciless nature of both Salem and McCarthy court proceedings and their dogged determination to convict, despite the lack of substantial evidence. When we look at the quote by Danforth in Act 3, we burn a hot fire here. It melts down all concealment. Another aspect of this is irony. So it's ironic that Danforth is saying this, because he's saying that, the revealing of witches who don't exist in this society. Certainly we've seen no evidence of it. It's just so far mass hysteria. He believes that the revealing of that will reveal that there is evil in Salem, but he has no idea how that's actually going to be revealed. What's happening is that by placing John Proctor in a situation where he must face his wrongdoing and he must decide whether his personal integrity is more important to him than his public reputation, and by extension his own safety, is what is revealed by the society, the crucible of this society, the crucible of this situation. That is what is melted away. His pride is melted away. What is left is his sincere Christian belief in the importance of his personal integrity, of telling the truth, of going to his maker with a clear conscience, even though he knows that means his death. The clear message here is also, because it's a realist drama, it's meant to be applied to life. We're meant to see something real here, both on the minute level about the importance of personal integrity, but also a message to a society caught up in mass hysteria of McCarthyism, the bread under the bed, the hysterical pressure to name names, to escape punishment by revealing your fellow artist or neighbor as a communist. Is saying, you must resist that. You must be authentically yourself. A decision Miller himself made and was blacklisted. So you could look at then the next paragraph, perhaps it's something a little bit more controversial, which would center around the device of the prop of the puppet, or poppet, I should say, which is actually a doll. The doll, as well as Rebecca Nurse, symbolizes the transformation of good to evil. Dolls in a normal society represent childhood innocence and bring happiness. In Salem, dolls represent evil. This extends to the Puritan government and church, being both entrusted to protect its citizens, yet both doing the opposite. In a society where safety requires a sound reputation, preservation of a person's integrity is impossible. They must choose, but the reader sees through this device that only one choice is valid. Now, this is where it gets a little tiny bit controversial, because this is very much my interpretation now. Like the doll goes from being innocent to being a source of evil, and a way for which, of course, John's wife can be prosecuted. John's corruption of Abigail, who was a virgin before working for the Proctors, can be seen as part of his one flaw that brings evil to the innocent. He is the one who initiates sex with Abigail, and she talks about how he looked at her, how he breathed around her, and then he doesn't protect her. He sets her aside, so he takes her innocence, if you wish. I can't stand when they talk about sex in that way, but she was very much a child, and he is the one who brings that original sin. That, well, I guess we're all born with original sin within this ideology, but he's the one who allows sin to enter his house. He acts in a way that is not in line with his personal ideology as a Christian. Now, to bring this back to the question, as a person who has been tempted by sin, he has not behaved in a way that preserves his integrity as a person. But further, to protect his reputation, he does not reveal that he is the one who corrupted the child. As the symbolism of the doll becomes corrupted as a metaphor for this. And it is only by the revelation of this and him admitting to it later, at the expense of his personal reputation, he can regain that integrity. So in this case, the poppet actually has wider symbolism. And it helps us understand that John needs to do this. John is the cause. John is the one that his rejection of Abigail is the motivation for her vengeance. Sorry, to bring that back as well. Remember that in the forest, she is trying to get Tip-Tipper to curse John's wife. All right, now a third paragraph, you could look at dialogue and allusion and exclusive language. Dialogue, of course, being the one that you would focus on mostly, being the generic convention. Now, here is a quote from John Proctor. "I do think I see some shred of goodness in John Proctor. Not enough to weave a banner with, but white enough to keep it from dogs. Give them no tear. Tears pleasure them, show honour now, show a stony heart, and sink them with it. John Proctor. As a tragic hero, he must attain clarity by the end and accept his fate. So it is generically sound the way he is going here for a tragedy. It's also a direct address to the people involved with the McCarthy trials as well. The idea that, be strong, be authentic, be truthful. There's some allusions in here, such as the idea of weaving a banner, not enough to weave a banner, the goodness, alluding to that idea of the great weaver, that all of our life is a tapestry and that every act we do is part of it, and the quality of the cloth that is created is a reflection of our life. You could look that up on Google if you want to. It's a fairly common allusion that you can find fairly easily. The use of words like shred and not enough. He's humble now in a way that he wasn't at the beginning. His own reputation, his pride has now been completely removed from him. He's a humbled man, which makes him more sympathetic and helps us feel that he is worthy of our respect, because we must respect him if we are to validate his actions. The idea of standing against an unfair court, standing against liars, telling the truth, and he gets absolution because within his ideology he will now be accepted into heaven. Now, for your fourth paragraph, if you were attempting one, I don't know how strong you are as writers, but it isn't a bad idea. You might want to look at the idea of a reversal, how the Proctors are very cold to each other in the beginning because they're, and John talks about, must I pay forever for my one mistake? And as it turns out, John, yes, you must. You really must, if you wish to, go into heaven and retain your wife's love. If you look at the behaviour between the couple at the beginning and at the end, once he has taken responsibility for his actions, he has chosen death over lies, he has chosen integrity over reputation, he is rewarded by love and acceptance from his wife. That companionship, that validation on the most intimate of levels, it's a very human thing to crave that kind of validation. He doesn't go onto the great unknown, he doesn't go onto the hangs and noose unloved. He goes a man who is respected and loved by his wife. So there is reward in that the reader sees. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. Feel free to go over, look at it again, and ask any questions that you have regarding my interpretation. These are suggestions only. There are many ways to answer this question.